Okay, so for today's lesson, now that we know how to graph a quadratic function, and we know all the different parts of our quadratic function, we're now going to start looking to solve quadratic functions. And we're only going to learn two different ways. Obviously, since we are at the end of the year here, we've only got, I think it's 3 or 4 more lessons until we are done. It's weird to say that. So we're really only going to be talking about 2 different ways to solve. There are multiple ways, and we have talked about one of them in particular, which is factoring. Seeing as we've done factoring for almost like 4 chapters, we're just going to kind of skip over that because we know how to solve using factoring. We've solved by factoring before. So we're going to focus on 2 different methods of solving a quadratic equation. And the first one that we're going to be working on is called the quadratic formula. Okay? Now, if you look online, and I will post a link in Teams for you to click on if you'd like, there is a nice little catchy tune that you can use to remember the quadratic formula. Seeing as this is public and on YouTube, I will not be singing that for you. I'm very sorry. If we were in school, obviously I would have sang it for you, but unfortunately we are not. If you come by next year sometime in my class, maybe I'll sing it for you, but I will not be singing it over YouTube. But the good thing about the quadratic formula is it is a formula. So it's very simple to solve. You only need to know 3 different things. 4 if you include the formula. Okay? So let's just go over the formula itself. So the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and all of that gets put over to a. Now, like I said, there is a song, there's a tune, it's kind of catchy. You probably all have heard the tune before, but I suggest at least going to the link that I post and watching it, because I can tell you one thing. If there's one thing that, and you can ask any senior, if there's one thing that they remember from Algebra 1, it's the quadratic formula song. Okay? It's, again, when you put songs to things, it makes it a little bit easier to understand or to remember. And the big thing about the quadratic formula is just remembering the formula. Okay? Because if we remember the formula, if we look at a quadratic function, remember, a quadratic function is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The only variables that are in my quadratic formula are a, we have it twice, b, we have that twice, and c. And those are directly given to us in the function. So once you've gotten a function, all you have to do is replace a, b, and c, and then you could use a calculator or, anything to just plug it in and solve. So the quadratic formula is literally just a formula where it's just plug in 3 numbers, and then you get to solve it. So let's take a look at this. Let's do one practice problem with our quadratic formula here. So we'll put the quadratic formula over on this side, and we will look to find the solution of x squared minus 12x equals negative 20. Okay, so we want to solve this by using the quadratic formula. Well, the problem with the quadratic, or this equation here, is that it's not in this form, right? It's not y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. You need everything to be on one side of the equation, and the other side to either be just y or just 0 or by itself. So what I need to do first is I need to take this negative 20, and I need to move it to the other side. I have to have everything on one side of the equation. The other side cannot have anything. It has to be either 0 or it has to be y. It cannot be anything else. So the first thing I need to do is I need to add 20 to both sides here. So when I add 20, I end up getting x squared minus 12x plus 20 equals 0. Now we're good. We have everything on this side. It looks like ax squared plus bx plus c. So we are able to now find what a is, what b is, and what c is. So again, a is the coefficient of the x squared. And the coefficient of the x squared here, seeing as there is not one, is 1. Remember, if there's no coefficient, the coefficient is 1. B is the coefficient of x. So the number in front of x is negative 12. Remember, the sign that's in front of the number always follows it. We didn't put a sign for the 1 because it's positive. But this is a negative 12, so my b is negative 12. C is the constant, or the number by itself, so c is 20. So now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take those 3 variables and I'm going to plug them into the quadratic formula. So I'm going to use my quadratic formula, this one over here, the x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of that gets put over to a, and I'm just going to plug in. A is 1, b is negative 12, and c is 20. So I have x equals negative b. Now b is already negative 12, so technically what I am doing here is it's going to be a negative 12, okay, because it does say negative b. B is negative 12, so negative b is negative 12. Then I'm going to put plus or minus. I'll talk about that in 1 second if you're confused about the plus or minus. The square root of b squared, remember b is negative 12, so it's negative 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 20. And then that all gets put over 2 times 1. So it looks like we have a lot of numbers here that we have to solve for, but really it's not that difficult. I would not suggest putting this directly into a calculator unless you have a smart calculator, a TI-83, TI-84, TI-89, and one where you can plug it in so that it looks directly like this. Some of the newer ones, you are able to actually put a fraction in, and it kind of works it out like that. But otherwise, I would not just plug this directly into a calculator. I would simplify it first, okay? And the way that I would simplify this, and this is where you want to pay attention, because this is kind of where a lot of people will screw up, is they will not simplify this correctly. The way that we want to simplify this is simplify what's underneath the radical first, okay? Do all of this first. So I'm going to go with doing negative 12 squared first. Well, we know that negative 12 squared is positive 144. Remember, when you square a negative number, it becomes positive. So negative 12 squared is positive 144. Minus, keep the minus sign. Now I'm going to do 4 times 1 times 20. Well, 4 times 1 is 4. And then 4 times 20 is 80. So underneath the radical, I have 144 minus 80. Now I can kind of work with everything else. I can work with the front here. Negative 12. Well, that's just a positive 12. Keep that plus or minus sign. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a second. Over 2 times 1 is 2. Okay. Now I'm going to continue working underneath the radical. 144 minus 80. 144 minus 80 is just 64. So we have x is equal to 12 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 2. Okay. Well, we should hopefully know what the square root of 64 is. That's a perfect square. The square root of 64 is 8. So this is going to become x is equal to 12 plus or minus 8 over 2. Now, this is where I want to talk about this plus or minus. The plus or minus is there because you can either do 12 plus 8 over 2, or you could do 12 minus 8 over 2. But you have to do them both. You can't just pick one or the other. You must do both of them. So that means for this, I'm going to be getting 2 different answers. One of them is where I'm going to do x is equal to 12 plus 8 over 2. The other one where I'm going to be doing 12 minus 8 over 2. So now I'm just going to work with both of these different ones. 12 plus 8, that's going to give us 20. And 20 over 2 just simplifies to be 10. So one of my answers is x equals 10. Then I do the other one. 12 minus 8 is going to give us 4. So I have x is equal to 4 over 2, and 4 over 2 simplifies to be 2. So I actually get 2 different solutions here. I have to put both of them. Both of those answers, or both of those solutions, are my answer. So my solutions for the equation x squared minus 12x equals negative 20 is 10 and 2. All right, so let's do one more of these for practice and to kind of show just a little bit of a different scenario here. So let's say I had the equation 10x squared minus 5x is equal to 25. Okay? So here, again, we see our equation. It is not equal to 0. The first thing I need to do, make it equal 0. So I am first going to subtract 25 from both sides. So I'm going to end up with the equation 10x squared minus 5x minus 25 equals 0. Now, let me be very clear here, guys. You have to put it in this order. You can't put the negative 25 first and act like that's a. Okay? The a is the coefficient of the x squared. The b is the coefficient of the x. The c is the constant, or the number by itself. Okay? If you rewrite this in a different order, you're going to confuse yourself as to what is a, what is b, and what is c. So again, a is the coefficient of x squared, the number in front of the x squared. B is the coefficient of the x, the number in front of the x, including the sign. C is the number by itself. Okay, that's very important. That's the second thing that a lot of people will do wrong when using the quadratic formula, is they will put the wrong A, the wrong B, and the wrong C. So obviously that's going to get you an incorrect answer. So you have to be really cautious about this. So for this problem, my 10, that's going to be my A. The negative 5, that's my B. And the negative 25, that's my C. So I'm going to take all of these and plug it into my quadratic formula. So again, quadratic formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Hopefully at this point you have watched the link that I have given you so that you have that tune kind of going in your head just to, kind of cement it in there. Again, every time I say the formula, I hear the tune. So trust me, it gets stuck in your head, and unfortunately you can't really get it out eventually. But let's take everything and plug it in. So I'm going to plug in 10 for A, negative 5 for B, and negative 25 for C. So I'm going to get x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 10 times negative 25, and that's going to be all over 2 times 10. Okay, so let's be a little cautious here. When doing the problem, let's start with what's underneath here. Negative 5 squared, That's going to give us a positive 25. So underneath my radical, I have positive 25 minus 4 times 10 is 40. 40 times negative 25, that's going to give us a negative 1,000. So I have minus negative 1,000. But remember, minus a negative, we need to change to be plus. Minus negative changes to plus. All right, it's very important. If you don't change that minus negative to a plus and you leave it as a minus, you will get this problem incorrect. All right, so let's do the rest of this stuff. Negative 5, that is a positive 5. Plus or minus. Over 2 times 10, that's 20. All right, so let's finish with what's underneath the radical. So we have 5 plus or minus the square root. 1,000 plus 25 is 1,025 over 20. Now, the problem with this is not only that 1,025 is a big number, it's also that it's not a perfect square. So when we're given a problem that we don't have a perfect square here, we are able to simplify it. Okay? I know in Algebra 2, what they're going to ask you to do is they're going to ask you to simplify the radical, leave it in radical form, and give two answers that are in radical form. For right now, we're not going to have to do that. We will round this. So we're going to take the square root of 1,025, and we're going to put that into a calculator and figure out the approximate value of the square root of 1,025. So the approximate value of the square root of 1,025 is, we'll round to the nearest hundredth here, I guess, is 32.01. So we're going to rewrite the square root of 1,025 as, like I said, 5 plus or minus 32.01 over 20. Okay. So again, we have this plus or minus here. We have to split this up into two different problems. One where we have the plus. So it's 5 plus 32.01 over 20. And one where we have the negative. So it's 5 minus 32.01 over 20. And now I just have to solve them both. So in the left one, we do 5 plus 32.01. That's 37.01. We divide that by 20. We should get that x is approximately positive 1.9. I was looking at the other one for a second. So this one's a positive 1.9. Then we come over here. We do the same thing. 5 minus 32.01 divided by 20. That's going to give us x is approximately negative 1.4. So again, two different answers for my quadratic equation. So again, you need to get both of those answers. Once you get down to this, once you've kind of simplified all your different parts, just split it up. One is a plus, one is a minus, and solve them both.